All right. Okay, so hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are so happy to have you all again today. My name is Hyun-Young Yoon, an adjunct professor, International Technology Professional Program, ITPP in Seoul National University. And today is the 8th session. And on behalf of the Global R&D Center, Seoul National University, and UNPOC, I'm very happy to welcome you to our 8th webinar from the Governance Capacity Development Sessions. So we have been great opportunities to learn general knowledge on the framework of strengthening public governance and accelerating innovation to achieve the 2030 agenda for sustainable development from many experts. So we hope you enjoy the rest of the session webinars. Okay. All right. Okay. So, and the theme of today is establishing a strong foundation of ESG practices in green leadership and technology innovation. Okay. So the building globally responsible approach in leaders' mind is crucial for realizing the global transformation into the new paradigm. So also leading the ESG-based technological evolution is absolutely required during the this transition. So like softwareization or modularization, intelligentification or electrification, ecosystemization and platformization of all technologies available are very critical in formulating right solutions that can fit into everywhere. And also leaders' role in leading this process is key in the building digital green societies. So in this context, this session will seek for inspiring leaders' vision for designing the big framework of changes for the whole society and foster technology innovation with approaches that are aligned with the values, principles, and the practices of ESG, and also, meanwhile, enhancing leaders' capacity in leading important changes for the global, regional, national, and local community. So to discuss about this topic, we invited 2 leading experts in this field, and their work reflects all the best experiences at the international organization and the global society. And our first speaker, Mr. Javier Mendeneres, Deputy Executive Director in Green Climate Fund, is going to talk about ESG, strong foundation in green leadership. And then our second speaker, Mr. John Song, Deputy Director of Global R&D Center, is going to talk about triune innovation for the sustainability. So to discuss about this topic, right, we have 30 minutes for each speakers, and after that 20 minutes for the question and answer. So I welcome you to any questions or comments throughout today's session in the Q&A box. Not chatting room, but Q&A box, please. Okay, so then let me introduce our first speaker today, Mr. Javier Mendeneres, the Deputy Executive Director at the Green Climate Fund, GCF, based in the Incheon, Songdo, Korea. And he previously served as GCF's Chief Financial Officer and Director of Support Services. And prior to that, he was Director and Representative of UNOPS in the Mercosur region, based in Argentina. And he was formerly a Division Manager of Investment and Development Banking at the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. And also one more very important news is he's going to be Dr. Mendeneres in 2 months, right? So please join me in welcoming Mr. Javier Mendeneres. So over to you, Mr. Mendeneres. You can share your screen, please. Oh, sorry, your voice is muted.
Yes, let me have a second, and as to share my screen, it was available earlier on, but let me again do it. I'm experiencing difficulties. You don't get to see it right now yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. My apologies for that. Yeah. And I don't have, okay. If you want to so that we don't have the audience waiting, if you would like to go with John next, because honestly, I don't know why it's not coming up. One.
Or would you want me to share your screen? Then we can help you too.
Yeah, it's
working.
Yeah, it's. I don't know what happened. It's been there all along. Thank you for that. So can you please give me a signal that that my presentation is being seen without any difficulties?
It's okay now.
All right. Well, governance capacity development series, season series. So we are moving on with my presentation, and see if it's going down, which is not. Okay. Little bit slow today. So ESG strong foundation in green leadership, and particularly on what it relates to the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund has been one of the leaders in particularly on the E of the ESG, on the environmental part. But since the establishment of the GCF back in 2014. The fund has been very strong in setting up policies that are indeed related to ESG, notably on the E and S, on what we call environmental social safeguards. So at this point, after 7 years of the fund being under implementation of projects, so we see a number of policies that have created a very robust ESG foundation. And that's talking about the gender policies. I'm referring to indigenous people. I'm referring to all the environmental framework. So I would say notably the GCF is well behind strengthening and participating as a green leader into a very ESG strong foundation. So that's a very relevant, important aspect. Now, the ESG should be fully integrated and guided by a common framework and balanced ESG standards. If we are to improve societies and ensure a sustainable, inclusive, and climate resilient planet, we ought to embed the ESG pillars measured by a set of KPIs. And then I will present some of them as an indication. So we are referring to the relentless advancement of citizen values, every day more important in our society. We're talking about environmental and ecosystem protections. To be more specific, I am referring to land degradation. I'm referring to stopping deforestation, to reducing livestock production, therefore with fewer methane emissions. I'm also referring in this point to more energy, renewable generation, more and more. And at the same time, I'm also referring to net zero CO2 emissions. So our next KPI could be established on safety and security. And this is where our stakeholders, where our society, it's presenting very clear signals of concerns about safety and security measures not being met within their communities. I'll refer now as the next indicator to health. I will refer to lifelong talent development, to open business opportunities, to social transparency. I'm referring to gender equality, to the inclusion of minor groups in the society. I'm referring to cultural openness, to governance at large. ESG principles can be governed through establishing the existing frameworks. GRI, SDGs, TCFD, I'm referring now to SASB, to the PRI, to IICD, to name a few of the important standards out there. And this with an engagement of all stakeholders, such as municipalities, civil society, private sector, so on and so forth. It's not going well down. I don't know why. Sorry to be experiencing difficulties, but it's not. My presentation doesn't seem. It's having difficulties. As you can see, it's escaping slides.
It's working.
No, this is not the slide that I was aiming at. There was one or two prior to that one. See, the communication is very slow, colleagues. I don't know if it's difficulties of connectivity from my end or from yours, but my slides, as you can see, they're not moving well. And the only thing that I can think of is just go throughout my presentation, although colleagues and audience, maybe the slide does not coincide entirely. I wanted to give you a few more and a very basic ideas on the health in particular. When I was mentioning earlier on about KPIs, I indicated health as one of them. And I felt it was very important at this point of our society to bring some elements of health and climate co-benefits. And the slide that you are missing at this point, it was a very basic, very good representation on the co-benefits within ESG entirely, the co-benefits of health and climate. And for that, I was pointing out at lower deaths from extreme heat. I was just picturing better mental health, less cardiovascular disease, lower level of respiratory disease, decreasing cancer rates, lower obesity rates, and improved outdoor and indoor air quality, a lower humidity, and less cooking fuels. What you have at this point on your screen, it relates to ESG and impact frameworks. And this is critical to our presentation. It is indeed critical to a green leadership. So what are ESG and impact frameworks? ESG and impact frameworks are two sides of the same coin. Both are necessary to not only create smarter society, but also a sustainable future in which all Earth's inhabitants thrive. So ESG primarily emphasizes limiting risk and negative effects of a business process as it relates to environmental, social, and governance issues, while impact identifies positive evidence-based priorities and intentionally works to measure and quantify the positive effects. So I'll run you through the three pillars as a very basic elements, but we refer to environmental. We want to keep in mind climate change, right? We want to keep in mind pollution and waste, natural resources. When we think about social, as to give you some elements, we're thinking about labor management. We're thinking about equal access and opportunity, safety, security and safety, product safety. And when we speak about governance at large, we want to consider financial transparency, board diversity, and business ethics. So as a part of the ESG green leadership, a great deal of importance, as you can imagine, should be given to the highest level in the hierarchy of the corporate world, that is board of directors. So we want to make sure that that leadership and ESG leadership is given to a board that has and receives enough guidance and training for that. So their role in the governance of ESG matters. Actions related to ESG governance structure for their own company's self-assessment and under the new ESG reporting requirements that are indeed expanding all throughout many different regions. Key steps for materiality assessment process. What they should concentrate on regarding climate-related risk and also potential impact on social issues and companies. So that's, in essence, the main elements in ensuring that our boards, the boards, are well prepared to take over on the ESG matters. We'll try to move to our next slide if we can. Yes, again, at the jump. Well, we'll navigate through the difficulties. My next slide, therefore not represented by this one, so apologies from my side again. So I would like to give an idea on the size and the dynamics of sustainable investment. So it is estimated by a number of sources, credible sources, namely McKinsey, BlackRock, HSBC, and several others, that in order to achieve a lower carbon emission levels, it would require an investment of $1.8 trillion per year. However, starting in 2030, this investment would generate a return of $2.8 trillion per year, which increases to 7 trillion by year 2050. This results in an economic return of nearly 24 trillion on a net present value basis over the next 30 years. Investment in lower carbon emissions levels is also estimated to support 87 million jobs annually by year 2030. So incorporating ESG risk and impact opportunities into green leadership, let's consider the following points. In recent years, ESG adoption has been growing rapidly, resulting in a material market shift, and it's estimated that in the next 10, 20 to 30 years, the millennial generation could put between 15 to $30 trillion into US-based ESG investments. As you can imagine, this trend is motivating and has motivated investors and corporations to increasingly participate in meeting sustainability requirements. So it is also estimated by S&P 500 that at least 86% of the corporations publicly report ESG performance through sustainability reporting on a yearly basis. And we find that a similar percentage, if not greater, in Europe, particularly on the Euro Stoxx 600, we found that nearly 90% of the listed companies do present an integrated report containing ESG, containing sustainability reporting. So in addition to that, we see one of the important frameworks like the SASB, Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, as one of the guiding frameworks that's giving us an important background on how to measure, how to identify material issues likely to impact performance on different industries. Sustained impact by supporting institutional investors. In the context of ESG and green leadership, it is of the utmost importance to work closely with regulators and to mainstream action. This is with a view to value creation of active commitments. This is with a view to scaling ESG solutions for asset owners across asset classes in public and in private markets. Also, knowledge management, intensifying learning, actions, and best practices through capacity building. And according to multiple literature review, we can infer that strong corporate ESG commitment is positively and significantly associated with a lower cost of capital. The materiality of the components is observed more acutely when we disaggregate the three pillars, environmental, social, and governance, individually. Finance and the insurance sectors have an important role to play in helping companies address some of the risks associated with climate change and also with unsustainable natural resource extraction. These risks include the transition risk, and by that I'm referring to the digital transformation, the changing of technologies, the new business models, and different consumer trends, consumer demands from the transition to a low carbon economy. As the second point, we see water-related risk. We see water-related risks as water pollution, such as water scarcity and flooding. A third element when we speak about the risks, talking about other resource-related risk. And I'm also mentioning and referring to stranded assets and the scarcity of certain minerals. And my point number 4 on risk is natural capital related risk. So this is to say ecosystem degradation, deforestation, air pollution, and soil nutrient loss. Some of these risks are diversifiable for the finance sector, but many are indeed systemic, impossible to avoid in practically all the sectors. Lastly, and well, I wish the slides would move, but lastly, let me please highlight some key issues and mainstream takeaways. And this is from very recent ESG forums all over the world. As the key issues, I would emphasize the importance of combining a top-down policies and a bottom-up initiatives for a more intense ESG role. Green financing solutions is my second key issue. And this, in a manner that is bespoke to different communities, different municipalities, different cities, countries, regions, continents. So the idea is finding green financing solutions for each one of those different groups of populations. My third key issue is what I call green financing for all. Availability of green financing for everyone. And my fourth point is ESG metrics that are increasingly accepted as the indicators for a robust risk management strategies. So these are, to start, my main key issues that I would like to follow by main takeaways for today. The first one is to invest in ESG is indeed to invest in risk management, is to invest in impact, and also to invest in opportunities. ESG compliant companies consistently outperform the market and have remained strong even during the difficult times of the pandemic. COVID-19 has actually highlighted the market advantage of investing in sustainability, and ESG ratings are being recognized nowadays as an indicator of strong long-term business models. My second takeaway is that ESG factors are increasingly more relevant in post-COVID-19. ESG will continue to escalate in importance because consumers increasingly care about the bigger picture, and because they are making investments and they are making consumption decisions based on how ESG conscious business are. As my third takeaway, I would say that whilst it is imperative for leaders to seize global demand for sustainable goods and services, it is equally essential to be mindful of the unique challenges of the communities and regions. Takeaway number 4, transition financing is about inclusiveness. Again, this is what I call green financing for all. We have to look into the economics, into the dynamics of where countries are at this point in their sustainability journey. Green financing is facing the challenges of potential greenwashing accusations, stimulating the need for more quality control, stimulating the need for better and greater supervision, as well as appropriate certifications. And colleagues, my takeaway number 5 is ESG must not turn into another set of fancy metrics. As sustainability is playing and will play a key role in future investments and overall business strategies, it is important to ensure that rigor is enforced in assessing sustainability for green financing to ensure real impact on our economies, societies, and the environment. With this, I finished, Professor Yoon, with my apologies again, because the presentation could not roll out appropriately. But thank you so much anyway. Over to you. Now it seems to be going. Well, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, even though there are some operational issues, anyway, it was a really interesting and insightful presentation. And thank you for your presentation, Mr. Mendeneres. We are going to have a question and answer session all together after we finish our second speaker's presentation, okay? All right. Then, all right. All right, so I'd like to introduce our second speaker today, Mr. John Song, Deputy Director of Global R&D Center, Seoul National University. Mr. John Song is a global visionary business architect focusing on the global transformation through sustainable, smart, green, and strategic transformation of economies, business ecosystems, and enterprises. With experience over 32 years in industrial visioning, strategic enterprise management, or integrated business technology architecture design and implementation, enterprise ICT systems implementation, and global collaboration and project management. He worked a lot and served for global enterprises and institutions. So today, he's going to give a lecture titled with Triune Innovation for Sustainability in terms of technology, nature, and people. So please join me welcoming Mr. John Song.
Thank you, Professor Yoon, for introducing me with kind words. I'm John Song, Deputy Director of Global Research and Development Business Center, Seoul National University, and I'm so happy and honored to be with you today to share my story about the sustainability based on sustainable development goals and environmental, social, and governance frameworks. I believe that no one on this planet is now exempt from the immediate problems we are facing now. The problems we are encountering now are various, but all the problems seem to unanimously call for immediate solutions. And I'm so sorry to tell you that we have got so many problems on this planet. The world is full of problems. Some problems are slow, while some are very fast. Climate changes that cause sea level rising, forcing people to lose their land and housing, and that cause severe weather situations of drought, flooding, and heat waves. As well, we have a water crisis in terms of shortage or lack of hygienic conditions of water. We have air pollution problems caused from the industrial chemicals, transportation emission gases, fine dust, and accumulation of all the pollutants of various sources and various hazardous materials. And I'm truly sad to see this picture of a victim of COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a loss of reaching to 4 million of lives, loss of businesses, loss of learning, and loss of family connections. And as well, I'm sad to every day see my belly swelling up because of the lack of exercise these days. I usually play a soccer game once every week, but I couldn't play the soccer games for the last 2 years properly. But out of all these, I think climate crisis is the most significant from the perspective of long-term and big impact. Our mandate, the most serious one for now, is to find a way to adapt to and mitigate the climate risks. But we have a tremendous challenge on this. Based on this diagram shown here, by 2030, we have to reduce the global carbon dioxide emission size down to 57 billion tons of every year. But according to the, actually we have to reduce it down to 25 billion tons every year to maintain the temperature rise of the global weather under 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial age. But current projection is saying that it will reach up to about 57 billion tons every year by 2030. So we have a gap of emission reduction of 32 billion tons every year by 2030. So according to the UN Environment Programme's 2019 and 2020 emission gap report, unless global greenhouse gas emissions fall by 7.6% every year between 2020 and 2030, the world will miss the opportunity to get on track towards the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal of the Paris Agreement. This means the collective ambition would need to increase more than 5-fold over current levels to deliver the cuts needed over the next decade for the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. Still, it's achievable, but to establish global temperature rise by 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century, we need to reduce emissions 45% by 2030 and achieve climate neutrality by 2050. We need to act fast. We need urgent action. So there's an urgent need for rapid global transformation. There are opportunities and challenges ahead of us. One good thing is that now the global community is more aware of the 17 SDG Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved by 2030. Increasing level of global consensus on the importance of achieving these 17 goals is a prime driver for us to take actions together. At the same time, as I showed you in the previous slide, we have an emission gap of 32 billion tons that should be reduced further down compared to the current collective commitments of all the nations. As well, we have a very tremendous opportunity from the technology areas. All the digital and advanced technologies of Industry Revolution 4.0 has given us a hope that we can do something to dramatically improve the efficiency and effectiveness of our global actions. At the same time, COVID-19 has caused lots of problems for us, but it has actually accelerated our recognition of the problems we have, and actually accelerated the action we have been taking and we are going to take. So transition to new societies was accelerated through global fight against COVID-19 pandemic, and new cognition of the reality of perpetual with the virus life beyond post-COVID-19 recovery with efforts of transitional economy are needed. So everyone will agree that we have a very small window of action to transform the world from the one that will going down to the one that will continue to survive. The window is from now to 2050, and the most critical period out of these 3 decades is this first decade of 2021 to 2030. So we have to take actions dramatically to transform and make paradigm shift of the world. I would like to think about the spirit of the time. What's the spirit of our time now? Actually, human history showed major shifts of civilizations and innovations. We evolved from hunters to farmers. So the transition from hunters to farmers created the civilizations. From the flat world to the round world. In the mid-age, we experienced philosophical paradigm shift that changed our idea about the universe and our world and God. And from medieval world to enlightened world, there was a big impact of Black Death plague. Actually, Black Death plague produced the birth of Renaissance, the most outstanding change, most glorious evolution of the global culture and the human intelligence. And now we have got another shift from civilization to cultivation to engineering, from agricultural economies to engineering or manufacturing economies. And then there was a shift from manufacturing to information age, thanks to computer and network intelligence. Now, I think we are in the age of the shift from information to connectivity. So now we have global connectivity all over the globe. And as well, all the societies, technologies, cultures, and people are converged together toward common shared values and to form a community of oneness. This is the huge opportunity for us. In 17th century, a French philosopher, René Descartes, said, "Cogito ergo sum." It means, I think, therefore I am. But now, this age of ours is the age of cogitatum ergo sumus. So it means, we think, therefore we are. So now I think it is important to have a strong social capacity in creating and sharing collective intelligence of all people, especially when we are trying to enable major communal initiatives such as SDG, ESG, sustainability, climate resilience, inclusiveness, disaster prevention, economic equity, and green transformation, and many, many others. And this collective intelligence is propelled with the shift of people's cognition about the values of economy. So spirit of the time now is the transition of economic value systems from scale and profit to true value for the people. This is evidenced by the pattern change of investment in financial investment by people. So millennial generation who were born between 1981 to 1996 is contributing to the investment in the sustainability areas. So there is an increasing concern and interest by this millennial generation about sustainability. So by 2019, consumers whose choice of bank was influenced by its purpose-controlled banking revenues worth 300 billion. So this is about 14% of total client-driven revenues for the banks. So we can see clear change of common core value for the people to invest. So we are not just investing for profit now. People are starting invest to have a result that is equivalent to the level of inclusiveness and sustainability. And as well, there is another reason why we have to invest in the sustainability areas. If the temperature globally will keep on rising to reach 2.0 degrees Celsius increase, then by 2030, the world will lose the opportunity of economic growth by 11.0%. And most critically hit is the area of Asian countries, ASEAN countries. So they will suffer decrease of 7.0% of economic growth. So now we can say that the natural integration of rationales of climate, SDG, ESG, and economic growth are merging together and they are being integrated together. So expected global investment in transforming infrastructures until 2030, delivering new era of economic growth, will be about $90 trillion US. And this investment will give us a benefit of $26 trillion US economic gain. And then it will give us 65 million new jobs per year as of 2030. Now, the spirit of the time, in other terms, zeitgeist of our age, is, I believe, the holistic innovation. The whole of all force approach for the holistic sustainability. When I say the holistic innovation and the integral parts of the force for the innovation, I would like to say there are three things: people, nature, and technology. The integration of the innovation effort from people perspective, nature perspective, technology perspective should be geared toward the achievement of the core SDG, ESG values. I would like to suggest 8 core values of SDG, ESG pursuit. The first one is economic equity. Second one is knowledgeability, acquiring and obtaining intelligence and having opportunity for lifelong learning. Serviceability in terms of social functions that can serve people to survive and enjoy their lives. Inclusiveness, integrity and transparency, culturality and diversity, health, security and safety, diversity and environmental richness. I don't have enough time today to dig into every item here, but later I hope that we can have another opportunities to go into each detail of these 8 values. So now the question is, how can he integrate the trying forces? How can he integrate the solutions based on nature-based, solutions based on technology-driven approach, and solutions based on people-centered approach? I have some cases here. First of all, I would like to talk about nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions can help cool the planet if we act now, is what the bunch of good scientists, including Cecil A.J., Geraldine Stewart Jenkins, and so forth, who reported on the Nature paper May this year. So you can see the picture of the women in India, in northern Mumbai, who are planting mangrove saplings to protect the area against rising sea levels. Actually, nature-based solutions can have lots of benefits, like it has got the benefit of carbon sink and storage, and revitalizing the flow of water, and providing agricultural benefits, keeping diversity, biodiversity, equity and sustainable development. It provides healthy environment as well. It can give a long-term effect compared to technology-based solutions. So nature-based solutions, according to their report, we can prevent 10 billion tons of carbon dioxide emission per year if we protect forests, green grasslands, and green fields and mangroves. So by protecting this land, we can have the emission reduction by 4 billion tons. And by managing land for crops, grazing, and timber better, we can reduce the carbon dioxide emission by 4 billion tons per year. And by restoring, like reforestation and restoring wetlands and so forth, we can reduce the carbon dioxide emission by 2 billion tons. So in this scenario, nature-based solutions that avoid emissions ramp up quickly by 2025 and absorb carbon while avoiding emissions at a rate of 10 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year. So by this effect, the nature-based solutions globally will be able to turn down the trajectory of a temperature rise by 0.1% degrees Celsius based on the 1.5 degrees Celsius rise scenario. There are two more cases I want to talk about. The first one is of the Great Green Wall, and the second one is re-greening the Sinai Peninsula. I love this picture on your left-hand side, a gentleman who is shooting a slingshot with a seed of tree to be planted on the land. The Great Green Wall initiative is to grow trees and plants, but as well, it is transforming the lives of millions of people in the Sahel region in sub-Saharan region of Africa. The Great Green Wall makes a vital contribution to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and a global agenda which aims to achieve a more equitable and sustainable world by 2030. This Great Green Wall reaches the total distance of 7,775 kilometers, covering total area of 11,662,500 hectares. The Great Green Wall is an Africa-led movement, and showing the roughly 50% progress up to now. And the initiative is already bringing life back to Africa's degraded landscapes at an unprecedented scale, providing food security, jobs, and a reason to stay for the millions who live along its path. And it's getting pledged investment amounting to 14.3 billion euros in funding for the Great Green Wall until 2025, led by the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and other leaders at One Planet Summit on January 11, 2021. Another example is a Regreening the Sinai Peninsula initiative led by Mr. Thijs van der Hoeven from Netherlands. he is saying that if we want to do something about global warming, we have to do something about deserts. And he is saying that our biggest challenge of turning this dry, sandy land of Sinai Peninsula into green one is lack of imagination. He is confident that he can turn the Sinai Peninsula into the green land. So there is an evidence that the Sinai once was green as recently as 4,500 to 8,000 years ago. What turned the Sinai into a desert was most likely human activity. Wherever they settle, humans tended to chop down trees and clear land. This loss of vegetation affects the land's ability to retain moisture. So grazing animals trample and consume plants when they try to grow back. The soil loses its structure and it's washed away, hence the silt in Lake Bardawil of Sinai Peninsula. So Van der Hoeven calculated the lake contained about 2.5 billion cubic meters of silt. If one were to restore the Sinai, the best reserve of nutrient-rich material was exactly what would be needed. So Mr. Thies is trying to dig out the silt out of the Lake Bardawil, and then use the silt to plant trees and provide the nutrition for the vegetables on the land. There is a system called Eco Machine, which is using algae, plants and bacteria, fungi, worms, insects, fish, and like series of natural organisms to clean water from the dirt water to fresh water. So their idea is to use the water from the sea, the ocean of Mediterranean, and the sea from the lake to turn it into the fresh water, which can be used to green the Sinai Peninsula. So they are making these eco-machines in the Sinai Peninsula land and gradually replicating the eco-machine to provide fresh water to plant trees. There is another example of Tree Planet, which is a Korean company. And you know, the beautiful actress Audrey Hepburn, who died in 1993, but who left a big heritage of goodwill. So her granddaughter, Emma Hepburn Ferrer, came to Korea to build a forest in memory of the Sewol ferry accident, which killed 304 people. And this company is running a pink campaign to plant the trees. And now they planted trees over 13 countries. They established 260 forests. They planted 864,658 trees. As well, there is another example from China, Alipay Ant Forest. Actually, since its launch in August 2016, Ant Forest had led to 100 million real trees planted, covering a total area of 1.4 million MU, which is 933 square kilometers. That's equivalent to 130,000 soccer pitches. And there are beautiful Chinese students who are planting trees there. This effort is under the initiative of Green Digital Finance Alliance, which is supported by UN Environment Program. What they do is that they link their bank account of Ant Financial to encourage the behaviors of the account holders to use shared bikes and use the green takeout method when they buy food from the restaurants, and use the online payment, and they can walk just, and then can use public transport. And this Ant Financial product gives a point to the account holders, And the points will be accumulated to be used for planting each and or trees. Another example is a people-centered approach. Now I told you about nature-based and people-centered integrated together. So changing financial behaviors. So there is a case of impact account. So it monitors and benchmarks the account holder's carbon footprint based on payments data. And then you accumulate the points as well and shares information on social and environmental issues, local community initiatives, opportunities to donate to not-for-profits. And it analyzes behavioral data to assess budget requirements and reallocate any cash surplus to higher earning deposits. So global revenue potential throughout this impact account is 50 to 60 billion. And there is a credit card system that pays the benefits for the consumer behaviors for carbon dioxide avoidance behaviors. As well, there are democratization of investments based on the DESA platform that can give those with limited funds access to a broader range of investment products by pooling their capital, which is using the concept of fragmented ownership based on blockchain technology, so that you can as well invest your just $1 to buy a small land, piece of small land, and so forth. Green deposit accounts, SME banking accounts that accelerates the investment in the green technologies as well, which is about the global revenue potential of 60 to 100 billion. Now, I think we can talk about the technology aspect. So now, up to now, I have told you about nature-based and people-centered. And now we are talking about technology-centered approach. There are 4 major areas of technologies that we can think about. First one is sector and infrastructure technology. The second one is digital and fourth industrial revolution technology. Third one is fintech. And fourth one is normal ICT technologies of data management and software. All these technologies can contribute to the realization of 8 sustainability core values I told you earlier, but especially the digital fourth industrial revolution technologies of big data, AI, AR, VR, blockchain, robotics, cloud, mobile tech networks, and quantum computing can contribute to multiple of these values. So there are lots of complex mappings between these technologies to sustainability values. And hopefully, if we can have another opportunity, we can dig into the mappings, exactly what we can do to use the technologies to realize the core values of sustainability. And there is a technological integration or pathways, which is softwareization, intelligentification, modularization, contextualization, electrification, regionalization, ecosystemization, platformization, which are the pathways for all these technologies of these 4 areas can converge, can evolve into more integrated solutions for our environment and for the society. One example is electric mobility case. So nowadays, the electric vehicles are turning into more softwareized ecosystem, more electrified and intelligentified, and more modularized, and more regionalized and contextualized to fit requirements of each specific community, region, or country. As well, platformization. So electric vehicle market is showing a great transition from the old to new one. And one of the core elements of the transition is platformization of basic batteries and powertrains of electric vehicles. As well, finally, ecosystemization refers to the collective whole integrative ecosystem of e-mobility industry. This shows the picture. I'm sharing this slide with everyone, so you can refer to the details later for your own use reference. So e-mobility case is showing the transition of one big industry to a new one, new ecosystem structure. So I believe that all the technology areas can go through the similar pathways to be able to provide an opportunities for dynamic agile integrations for the important initiatives like smart city, new mobility, digital transformation, and post-COVID-19 green recovery and so forth. I wish that all these technological areas together can be integrated again together to form a system of systems based on the initiatives like developing platforms, which will eventually provide us with the opportunity to have an intelligence of intelligence. So on the right-hand side, I showed how we can develop an integrated global level framework of innovation, integrative innovation platform, innovation intelligence hub. Finally, I would like to say you are the leaders of ESG and SDG and sustainability efforts. I believe the innovation leaders' heart should be of three types or combined heart of three characters: farmer, engineer, poet. Farmer waits for the seeds to grow. Farmer is cultivating the product. Engineer discovers, researches, invents, innovates, implements. And poet thinks, imagines, creates, and finds out deep truth. I hope that everyone of you can be a good leader with three hearts in your heart. Back to the motto I told you, cogitatum ergo sumus. We think, therefore we are. Society can be smart when we are collectively smart. When societies are smart, opportunities of increasing and actualizing core human values increase. But now I have one more. Cogitatum ergo facimus. It means we think, therefore we act. Our world can be smarter, greener, and more equitable when we think, design, and act together, integrating the triune forces of innovation. I told you today. There's informative material at the back of the document I'm going to share. So everyone enjoy the material as well. And thank you everyone for listening to me today. And it was my great honor to share my story of my sustainability case. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the wonderful lecture, Mr. John Song, especially beautiful slide. I really loved it. Right, okay. So now we have our Q&A sessions. And I think we have a number of questions from the Q&A box during the lectures. So let me just see. Because the letter is too small. I have to make it bigger to read it for you. Okay, let's see. Right. So I think the questions for Mr. Javier Mendeneres. Okay. Okay. So there is a questions. What kind of incentive give to companies to consistently contribute to green innovation? And the And this question is about there are some tax reduction and some kind of incentives, but what else? What else incentives may we, provide to the companies to contribute to the green innovation? So I think it's for the Mr. Javier Mendeneres. Would you like to make an answer for these questions?
Yeah, yes, I think you are Professor Yoon. Also, I would like to echo on congratulating Professor Song for the very good and inspiring presentation. As regards to the incentives on companies, that's how I understood the question. So to advocate for a green innovation, well, from the Green Climate Fund and our business model, what we do is we channel our assistance, financial assistance, technical assistance, our investments, our financing. We do it through a number of entities that get accredited with the GCF. So it is within that type of engagement that we provide assistance, and that is through a number of different instruments. So they go from grant, which is a non-reimbursable assistance, all the way to an investment in equity instruments into the companies, and in that list of financial products and instruments, we do provide capacity training, and we do provide technical support for countries to establish their own legal frameworks that at the end of the day will govern on tax reductions, subsidies, so on and so forth. In reality, on my response to the person asking the question, our business model and our mandate on the GCF is that our climate finance, our climate action is to respond to a country-driven needs. So it is for the country to come into the GCF and make the request that they consider more pertinent for the country to tackle climate change, and climate change from the perspective of mitigation and adaptation. So whether the country, and by country I mean we serve 134 plus countries in the world, so that we do respond to their needs. It's not the usual traditional old multilateral financing where there was a lot of impositions. The GCF, it's open, it is open to the request and the needs of the developing countries. And in such a way, what we have is a number of instruments, financial instruments to support those countries, like I said, the technical assistance, including from project preparation, facility readiness of the country's investments, so on and so forth. Over to you, Professor Yoon.
Okay, thank you. I hope the answer from Mr. Javier Mendeneres, the answer for the questions. And there are some similar questions from, I think it's from Philippines. The question is, does the UN pressure the government of the third world countries like Philippines to pass laws or make it their policy to stop this like illegal logging or something like that? So I think it's about some kind of UN's position, but as an international organization like GCF, do you think, I mean, Mr. Javier Mendeneres, do you think how it can be possible in the perspectives of international organization like GCF?
Yeah, I can see the question now. In reality, when you utilize the expression, does the UN pressure governments of third world countries to pass laws? In reality, you could use that as an expression as to pressure or in reality, it's not directly to addressed to developing countries. It is for all countries to follow. So the UN, through the different through the system itself, different programs, agencies, what they do is they advocate for the best international practice, and for that, as you know, there is the need to have a legal framework that is robust enough, so that we all stop illegal practices, and we all stop deforestation, we all stop pollution. So I think my point in here, I think is Marisa. Marisa, my point in here is that we cannot say this is aimed to developing countries. It is aimed to all countries in the world. And that is precisely one of the important roles of the United Nations. It's to advocate, and now is to advocate for for those sustainable development goals within which today's topic is extremely pertinent. A good framework to implement the 3 ESG factors, pillars, environmental, social, and governance. A very good framework to implement that is precisely the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So I hope I have covered your question, Marisa, but if not, I will be happy to take it offline also. Over to you, Professor Yun.
Okay, thank you. Then I will give a question to the Mr. John Song. Here's a question from Sonation University, Bania Baturi. And I think the question is about like he is concerned about the intellectual property being shared among the leaders. So the question is, may others have more knowledge about these issues? Would you like to answer for this question?
Actually, I couldn't get exactly what the question is about. So it's sharing the knowledge between the companies, the leaders. There are lots of ways for the leaders to participate in discussions, to share the knowledge and the cases and the best practices. But I think the most important one is that the motivation of the leaders and motivation of the companies. And the motivation doesn't come from the just ethics. It should come from the economic values that can be harvested through their participation in the global efforts of sustainable development and ESG efforts. But nowadays, I think that rationale for the economic reasons for the leaders of the businesses to come out to participate in the discussion of what they can do to change their ways of business, more geared to the sustainability and fight against the climate crisis. For example, currently the carbon pricing is too low for the reality of the urgency of climate actions for every part of the globe. Like it's around the $15 and $20 range. But realistically, we have to raise it up to $120 per ton. If this price goes up and then globally agreed to, then it will give a great reason for the business leaders to reduce their business activities that are contributing to the emission of carbon dioxide, because they have to buy the very expensive carbon credit. As well, another thing I can think about is about the deforestation and forestation. I think we have to push the global community to accept the natural asset concept. In Brazil, they are burning trees in the Amazon area. Why? Because they have to live. They have to make their lives, make something for their lives. So then what it means is that we have to provide a way for the people there to not burn the trees, but keep the trees and gain economic benefit out of keeping the trees around them. This is not an easy thing to do, but if we are working together, we could share ideas together, then we can find a way to admit and accept the values of natural resources and pay for the preserved natural resources. I think that's what I can tell now.
Okay, thank you. And the second question for Mr. Song is, yeah, he's impressed about your slide. And here's the question: what should be the primary effective tools to sensitize and capacity building of civil servants and effective engagement of political leaders to make big change in these issues? Can you see the question from Lamin?
Yes, I think this is a very great question. I think it's not an easy thing to provide good answer to this one, because all the social contexts are different by community and by community, or by country. So for example, in Korea, in the developing the smart cities, there was a big driving power from the government. So the government planned the smart city agenda, strategies, and it invested in the municipalities for developing their own programs and strategies and ideas about establishing smart cities. So Korea is different in that way, in a way that it drives the smart city initiatives as through the top-down approach. But other countries like Canada and USA and in Europe, they took different approach. Of course, there was a governmental support and the leadership, but municipalities and the people started from the ground to build up their own smart city engagement and initiatives. Similar thing can be thought about this one. So it depends on the cultural context of a country or the company, but I think as Greta Thunberg is trying to persuade people to come out to talk about the climate change, I think it's a general level of awareness of people that can drive leaders to move, leaders of business, leaders of governments to move. So we have to talk, we have to share ideas, we have to speak out. That's what the students on the street are shouting, because without the people's claim, the leaders, some leaders will not act enough to join the force of the innovation for the sustainability.
Okay, wow, thank you. It was a very difficult question, as I know, but the answer was great and very insightful. Thank you for the both speakers for the answers from the questions. And I think we have a couple of questions more, but our time is up. So I think we have to finalize the session today. So I like to say we really appreciate both speakers for your time today on this really fascinating topic. And thank you all for joining us on this webinar, right? Okay, and lastly, I'd like to ask you to participate in the post-event survey for today's webinar. As always, we do. So you can easily access through this QR code. Your participation will be very helpful to enhance the quality of the remaining webinar. So, and also the presentation materials you can download from the link, which is the steps uploaded on the chatting rooms. So thank you again for your time and participation, and hopefully we'll see you all next week again. Okay, thank you and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.